Finding fairness in farm transition. It's an exciting topic. It's something that people want to avoid because they're so avoidant of conflict and they don't want to cause family fights. And so everyone's living in this neutral zone and the pain of not knowing. So what do farmers truly want? I think that farmers want to keep their land intact. They want a profitable business, and they also want to have harmony with siblings and with family. So these are the things that you need to consider when you're working with your clients and also as a farm family. What is it that you truly want, and how can you share that with each other? But the problem in finding fairness and keeping people stuck in transition is that it's an emotional factor affecting planning. And the ability to express emotion is a strong conflict behavior, a strong skill that I want you all to have. So I want you to grab a piece of paper and I want you to draw Mickey Mouse. So here's an example of Mickey Mouse. And what I want you to do is draw a big left ear, a big right ear, and a big face. And what I'm asking you to do is to think about all of the different interlockings and systems that are in what's happening in your farm situation or with your clients right now. So first of all, we have the left ear, which is Mickey's left ear, which is the family system. Everybody belongs to your family. Some people are happy, some people aren't. Some people are talking. Everybody thinks you should talk, but you don't know how to get there. And then you have the system of the business of the farm. And not everybody in the family is in this circle. And then the third circle that you have is the ownership circle. And that's where fairness becomes an interesting conversation, especially when you have 37-year-old young men and women who are the successors. They've been employees to the farm. And, you know, just this week I was speaking to a family of high net worth where a 37-year-old still doesn't have any ownership. And I'm going, how did you let that happen? So I want you to think about this first question. What is the legacy that you are leaving? And it's not just about money and land. It's about the entire culture of your farm, because every farm has a choice to stay doing nothing or a choice to grab the bull by the horns. And many of you are familiar with my undiscussable talking stick. I want this to be the marker day that you are going to decide that you can't have status quo anymore. It's your farm, it's your family, it's your choice. Things start to happen. So what is it that you believe to be true on your farm? What are your core values? How are you behaving towards each other? And how are you making decisions? This is all part of the culture of your farm. So the whole discussion around finding fairness is more about just where the assets are going to go and who and how you're going to groom and train your beneficiaries to manage wealth, although that's a really big part of it. But it's also about the culture of what your legacy is going to be. So I'm looking to you today to consider a significant mindset shift on how you think and speak about fairness. Because in my world, the mindset shift that needs to happen in agriculture, in the current reality that we're in, is that fairness is actually defined as helping everyone be successful. I used to collect smiley faces when I was a young girl, and a smiley face to me means positivity and opportunity. And when we're working towards good conflict behavior to make hard decisions, we are creating solutions to help everyone be successful. What has to stop is conflict avoidance. And we need to have a mindset shift too around having conflict and tough conversations about fairness as a business risk management strategy. So remember, it's your family, it's your farm, it's your choice. And I'm putting my number on the screen here, 204-534-7466. Take a picture, put it in your phone. I'm always available to you by text and on my website to have a discovery conversation on how we can get this conversation started. And here is the crux of my presentation today. FAIR, F-A-I-R, financial transparency, what your attitudes are towards money, what are your intentions. Love does not read minds. I have no idea what you want or what you're thinking, feeling, needing unless you tell me. And then lastly, it's about the roles and the rebels, because somebody in your farm may or may not be happy with the decisions that you're making. So let's unpack finances. And financial transparency is huge because people need to know the numbers. They need to know what your income streams are going to be as founders. They need to know what income expectations there are for Gen 2, and also is there money that needs to be set aside or parked towards building a new house or residence. So my 3 key questions that are going to help you in framing how you think about fairness are: what are the need for income streams for Gen 1 and Gen 2 and Gen 3 if that's possible, if there's grandparents still involved? And number 2, where are people going to live? And number 3, how are we going to treat the non-farm heirs? Which of course is part of the big fairness question. It also involves things like debt servicing, whether or not you're going to give gifts with a warm hand or a cold one, and what the viability of the farm is, how many people and families can this farm actually support, and then of course the question about how you're going to navigate all of that with your advisors. And it just shocks me that people are working with accountants, but they've never had these conversations. And maybe it's time to consider building a bigger team of advisors to get you the information you need. And the first one with my little piggy bank here is the income stream, because you need obviously a lifestyle income. So fairness to you as parents, what is your income stream going to be? What is the number that you need at 64, 74, 84, and 94? And you can get a financial planner to help you figure that out. But you need to start throwing numbers on the table and playing with possibility of what that personal wealth bubble is going to look like. And if that personal wealth bubble is non-existent, because like many farm families, you've just keep putting everything back into the farm for the last 40 years, then you have a very big issue to work out, because you have to come up with a system of drawing income to you as founders. And that's a hard discussion when everything has been putting back into the farm. And it's also a hard discussion for women when they're tired now after 45 years of marriage and say, hey, I've given you my best 45 years of life. When is it my turn to get what I want? And maybe you're also coming to the realization that there's not enough to give to what you thought you might give to your children or to charity or to other causes. Then there's the debt servicing issue in terms of how much money do you expect your heirs or the successors to buy into the assets of the farm and to manage debt and to service debt. So what's the combination going to be of buying and gifting? Another thing that I mentioned earlier was viability. How many families can this farm actually support? And a lot of people's definition of success is, Elaine, I want everyone to come home for Thanksgiving and Christmas and Easter and special celebrations. I don't want us to have this code of silence around what the future looks like for fairness on the transition of assets on this farm. And viability is a huge issue. Many accounting firms, both Myers, Norris, Penny and BDO and other firms, have benchmarking reporting systems that you can ask for to help you look at where that viability is sitting. And if you haven't been really digesting your financial statements, well, you've got time to do that now. So look at what kinds of operating agreements you might need to have. The A in FAIR stands for attitude. So my curiosity is, what do you believe to be true about money? What are your money scripts? Is money an energy to you? Or is money there's something never enough of? Or is money the farm monster? Is that it always goes into the farm? If it's for the farm, it's good money. If it's for anything else, it's bad money and has a label. I don't know what your money scripts are, but later today you'll be listening to Dr. Moira Summers, who's a financial psychologist, and she's got great resources and a great book called Advice That Sticks that may help you with that. And I'd also recommend a book by Courtney Pullen called Intentional Wealth, which I'll show you later in the presentation. Another problem with attitude is that there's a saying is, where is it written that we need to make all of our children economically equal? And I want you to sit with that. Where is that written? Because it's an impossibility in agriculture. I have 2 children, one who's a farm successor, who's running a multi-million-dollar farm with his parents. And I have a daughter who's not able to create an income on her own. Their scenarios are going to be very different for their entire life, but they're both happy, they're both in relationship with each other, and they understand what the future holds because we've talked about it and we've made a way for them both to be successful and have what they need. I'm on this journey just like you are. I'm actually in my third succession plan. So the question around attitude that I want you to ask is, what does money mean to you? And for some of you, it's survival. For some of you, it's paying off debt as quickly as possible. For some of you, it's abundance. For some of you, it's scarcity. For me right now, it's the freedom to choose, and it's a resource to manage and to steward and to create legacy with, not only for my own family, but for other passions and causes that are important to me. What does money mean to you? Write that down, because you need to have that conversation. The other thing I'd like you to consider is that money does not equal love. If you really loved me, you would do bump, bump, bump. And so when I talk to families like I did this week, you discover that one child has already been helped by buying a small farm and given an acreage and given opportunity. Another child has been helped with a mortgage. But if there's always this take entitlement mentality, the conversations are going to be hard. So money in my world does not equal love. I also want you to think what I said about earlier about culture, about what you believe to be true in knowing what your core values are. I value giving and generosity. I also value friendship and relationship far above whether or not people feel that they've been given enough money. And that became true to me when I was having a conversation with my parents about their succession plan way back in 1998. And my mother was told then that that she was going to have to give all of her farming shares to her farming son in order to make things valuable. And I'll continue that story in the next piece. But what you believe to be true is really an important piece on how you come to the conversation and whether or not you trust each other. So do some exploration around what your core beliefs are and what you truly value. The other thing I mentioned before is that you have the opportunity to have a fair exchange of value as you invest in the advice and the planning process. So if you don't feel confident in the current advisors that you have, and this is a call out to the advisors on this presentation, is show up well and serve well and do good work. Because if you don't do good work, your clients, farmer families, have a choice to go somewhere else and build a different team. So it's really important that you choose a team that you trust and that you have people that listen well to you. So the whole attitude piece around fairness is creating family meetings or a forum for families to have a place to share what's truly important to them and respond carefully to concerns. Now we need to talk about intent. I want to show you a gift that I got from my mom when she was about 60 years old. And here it is. It's a full-length black ranch mink coat. It's now probably worth about $8,000, which is kind of like wearing a car if you think of the value of what you might buy for another $8,000 if you needed a new pickup truck, or not a used one anyway. My mom loved me very much. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. And the reason I brought the mink coat to this presentation is when I wear this coat, and I used to be able to go shopping, people would treat me differently because they thought I had a lot of money based on looking at the mink coat. This mink coat was a gift from my mom because she wanted me to enjoy it. And she bought it back in the 80s with a truckload of wheat. And I think when she purchased it, it might have cost around $2,500. My mom loved me very much, but in my mom's will, I was not mentioned. And she died at 65, 6 weeks after the meeting that we had, talking about our intentions, about what we wanted for the transition of the Edie farm at Dugald. And the reason I tell this story is because many people say, oh, Elaine, you have no idea what this feels like. Well, actually, I kind of do. But I'm not upset about the decisions that my mom and my dad made for their estate plan because I was part of the decision-making process. I shared my intent. Remember earlier I said, where is it written that you have to make all of your children economically equal? Because the current reality also is that some children are wealthier than their parents, which was the case for myself, my non-farming brother. And my single sister was given land by my mom because my mom was very intentional about making sure that my sister also had some additional resources. So intent, action, effect is a core conflict communication principle. So when you're sharing your intent about why you're making the decisions that you're making, I want you to be able to explain to your children, explain to your spouse, what is your intent? Why are you needing what you need as a founder? Why are you needing what you need as a farm manager or a successor? And farm successors can only manage so much debt. And they can't manage paying off millions to siblings for land that they need to keep. And Merle Good may have shown you another way of doing things where you can have 15-year or 20-year land lease and rental agreements, which is another way to do it. In the Froese family, they gifted land to the non-farming sisters while everyone was alive when they were in their 30s, and then we as the farming couple had the opportunity to buy that land back. But we were buying $67,000 quarters, not $440,000 quarters. So here's another Elaine Froese that pays. That was then, and this is now. So when you're sharing your needs about what the family needs and what the vision is, I want you to think about how important it is to share and initiate what your intention is. The other question I have is, do you as spouses actually agree with your intentions? Because if you're the woman who came from a farming family where it was part of the culture that the land goes to the boys, the cash goes to the girls, and I'm oversimplifying things, but I know of a case where this is to be true, where those girls are now suing their brothers because they didn't like what went down. But the brothers are the ones who are the farmers, and the girls went and did other things. And I'm not being sexist or biased here, but I just want you to put these factors out on the table and say, well, that doesn't feel right. And especially now with the number of women involved in agriculture as managers and as full partners, everybody's needs need to be considered. So if you have the opportunity to see disalignment, especially those of you on this call who are advisors, if you don't see the founders agreeing, then you're not going to get anywhere. So you need to really work at figuring out what that's going to look like. And then the next piece is roles and rebels. What is fair DNA pay? What do you get, not just for being involved in the family business, what do you get just for being in this circle, just for being in the family circle? And this was a comment I had many years ago from a chicken farmer who was having trouble with getting his transition plan with his father, because the father had this very high need to make everyone in his family economically equal, and it fell apart. It just wasn't going to work. So you're going to have pushback, and pushback can come sometimes from head resistance, people not understanding the complexity of what you're trying to do. And there's a product right now called a WEP, a wealth enhancement product by definesuccess.ca. That's a corporate insurance boutique kind of thing that large accounting firms have approved to use as another planning tool, so that non-farming children can get significant sums of money, north of $1 million in some cases, and bigger. But why I'm mentioning that is understanding these complex solutions to try and not have a huge, what Chris Delaney calls mismatch, is a bit of a job, and it's a journey. And again, your situation may change. So when we talk about the R in fairness, when we talk about roles and rebels, what is it that you would like to give to your family to bless them? And one of the ways that I'm working towards fairness in my stewarding of wealth and sharing and capturing and creating wealth is to think of my grandchildren. So RESPs, and thinking of tax-free savings accounts, and thinking of distributing wealth while you're alive, while people can actually say thank you and appreciate it, and that it becomes something that's part of the culture of giving, and not just thinking about, well, we'll just back everything up till when Elaine dies, which to me is not the greatest way to go. I would much rather see you being on a journey of distributing wealth and creating a culture of what giving looks like while you're all alive. Giving to yourselves, giving to your family, and giving beyond to community. Another piece of roles and rebels, and the R is well, he's the oldest or she has the most skills, so that's where the wealth should go to. And that can cause a lot of resentment. But again, you need to have that conversation with each adult child. Because as I said at the beginning, every child will have a different response. You'll have 4 kids, you'll get 4 different responses from them as to what fairness looks like to them. The other thing I want you to think about is, what are you going to do with unrealistic expectations? What are you going to do that no matter what you do, nobody's agreeing? So let's go back to my original premise. Fairness in farm transition is helping everyone be successful. And it has to look like, what does role success look like in terms of what is your vision and what is your passion? Do the spouses agree? Do they have the same vision? And have you done a good job of making sure that your designated successor or successors have the passion to manage the business well? And is it fair to them, when they are taking all of the risk of being $5 million in debt because they built a new dairy barn, that the other siblings get a large amount of assets when there's only a limited piece to go around? And I have another saying, a farm is not a piece of pie. It's not something that can be chopped up into 4 equal parts if there's 4 children. And you may disagree with me, and I'm totally fine with that. I'm not here to be liked. I'm here to ask some really hard questions and give you language around how you're going to have this conversation around fairness. The other piece is the viability thing. So let's remember to look at the numbers and have financial transparency and have discussions on what's a reasonable expectation for debt load. And that's why Patty Duran, who's speaking in later today, who works as a farm transition specialist with FCC and is a dear friend of mine, I appreciate Patty's approach and FCC, and because their agriculture is all they do. And there's an opportunity there to sit down with a relationship manager. And as a young person, if you're 37 and watching this, your homework next week is to make an appointment with your lender of choice and go and talk to them about, what am I worth in terms of debt servicing? What could I possibly start buying into? And not in an off-the-charts kind of way, but what would be a realistically manageable, good kind of debt servicing for you to think about? Because that's going to give you power to start negotiating the transfer of that management circle into some partial ownership. And that will be a journey that you want to get started on. Because at 37, you're about to be 3 years away from 40. And in my world as a coach, when you're 40, you need to have power and control of the destiny of your family business. The other thing I want you to think about is, what are you not hearing? So get yourself a planning binder, a journal, a place to land thoughts, so that when you have the thought, you don't lose it, and that you can bring that to your next family meeting. And start having regular family business meetings that are 2 kinds, operational and strategic, so that you can start making some collaborative decisions. And then think about what you need for written agreements. It's shocking to me, and Chris Delaney in his presentation with FCC in December was talking about the 5 mistakes that farmers make in estate planning. And it's shocking to me, again, as I speak to families, the number of you that are on this presentation today who don't have a will. Not only that, you don't have a power of attorney, and many of you have a very old will. And you can't go and physically see a lawyer possibly today, but you can pick up the phone, you can do Zoom calls, and now lawyers have the capacity to do digital witnessing with you. So it is true that you can pick whatever lawyer in your province you want to work with them over Zoom, and you can get those written agreements. The other thing around fairness is, I want you to think about your life beyond the farm. When I die, I want to be known as a woman who is rich towards God and rich in relationship. That's my vision. So think about how you're behaving now and what consequences that's having in the R factor of fair. Think about what roles and responsibilities you want as an older, aging farmer in place and a spouse on the farm. What do you want your roles and responsibilities to be? And start talking about that. And the fairness piece for women, I need to let you know, is also huge about appreciation and respect. Many of us have worked a long time to make money to help support the family living line of our farms. And many women in their 60s and 70s are now really tired. And they would like to have some joy in enjoying the fruit of their labor. And that's why divorce is this other undiscussable lingering back around us in fairness, because people don't understand that their needs aren't being met, and there's this disconnect as to what they expected would happen. So in February, in Gray News, you'll read an article that I've written called The Validation of Farm Women. And validation means you're affirmed and your opinions respected, and that you can have a voice at the table. And I've got a young dairy woman on this slide, and she's taking care of her dairy in Nova Scotia. I've met young dairy women who are moving away from their farm of origin because they're not being listened to and they're not being heard, and fairness is not happening in their reality. So it's very important that we make sure that everybody who contributes to the farm family and everybody who contributes to the farm team, that their voice is heard and that they're validated. The successor, to be fair to them, also needs to have mentoring and needs to have a learning plan. And this is where there's an important role for you as the founder. If you don't have a teaching kind of bent, then what can you do to create a learning plan so that the successor can manage large sums of wealth very well? And that's why it's so important that this conversation not just be about money and land, but also how you want to pass the torch to the beneficiaries of your wealth so that they can manage that wealth well. And again, we have to blow apart secret keeping. No more family secrets. No more assumptions. It's not helpful when people are guessing what's in the will. It's not helpful when people don't understand or know the degree of debt that their 67-year-old father and mother are still carrying because they're too embarrassed or too ashamed to admit that they aren't in the place at age 67 that they hoped that they would be. And once they get the debt cleared up, then things will change. Well, then we have to play the what if game. What if dad gets schmucked in a car accident? What if mom has a stroke and a brain bleed? What if somebody is incapacitated? So exploring expectations happens today. This is not something that you can keep putting off. And as I work towards the end of this presentation, I just want you to sit with this thought. Take a picture of this slide. Put it on Twitter. Being fair in farm transition is an intention of your heart. Remember, I talked about not understanding intellectually, and so you have pushback from your head. But the biggest pushback I see as a farm family coach is the inability to navigate emotion. It's good to sit with emotion. It's good to express your emotions as a conflict behavior that's positive. It's good to say, Elaine, you don't look like you're totally in agreement with this. What's happening for you? Do you not like this? How does this feel for you? And I've met many women who would be more than willing to start transitioning more of the assets if they just were appreciated, and if their opinion mattered, and if they were given the gift of time. So being fair is an intention of your heart. So you need to think about where the emotional resistance is coming back from the heart. And then I also want you to touch your gut, because the gut is the trust piece. And if you don't trust people in your farm management team to make good decisions, if you don't trust your advisor is giving you really good full service in terms of all of the tax specialists and valuation people and a full spectrum of service, then it's up to you to make a decision to do something differently. So basically, another saying I have is talk does not cook rice. It's time for you today, with that paper in front of you, to make your to-do list and get that planning binder. And if you want binder tabs, just fire me an email at farmfamilycoach.com on my contact sheet, and I'd be happy to send that to you. And the Because I Love You list that was made by my friend Maggie Van Camp to get you starting to get organized. But you need a financial planner to help you know that you're going to have enough money till you're 102. You need to talk and listen. So you need to start thinking about what it is you truly want and how you're going to start communicating that with your family. You also need to embrace conflict. And if you need more help in being better at conflict, again, reach out to me. I have a great online assessment that costs $55 that will help you identify what your trigger buttons are and what you need to shift. The other thing I want you to think about is how your roles are changing. And here's my question. What is it that you do now where you lose all track of time? Because it's important for you to have flow in your work, and it's important for you to have meaning and purpose. So if you're not having a good time with the current roles that you have on your farm, then what are you doing to shift that? And how are you making those shifts? And again, Marilee Adams wrote the book, Change Your Question, Change Your Life. It's time for everyone to start asking more powerful questions. And deadlines are helpful too. So it's January. Can't do a whole lot right now. Many of us are in lockdown. We can work, but maybe it's time for us to also get organized and put some things in place. Get your wills done and get your power of attorney and get them updated. Start making plans for some deadlines and put some time on the calendar just to have some discovery family meetings. Go to my YouTube channel at Elaine Froese Farm Family Coach, and you can watch Finding Fairness in Farm Transition as a family and use that as a conversation starter. But talk does not cook rice. We need to act. We also need to understand as advisors that many of you are thinking of client families where things have not worked out. And Dr. Henry Cloud has a great audio book, which I've referred to many young farmers this year, called What to Do. It's called Necessary Endings. And he talks about what to do when things don't work out and signs of when it's time to just let it go. And I will be doing more writing this winter about failed succession plans and how to emotionally recover when no matter how much hard work you did in this journey, things still didn't work out. And I'm thinking of one ranch family who I know has been gifted a large sum of money to restart in a different career because it became very clear to this couple after reading this book, Necessary Endings by Dr. Henry Cloud, that things weren't going to work out. And Chris Delaney in his presentation talks about irrational behavior and rational behavior. And many people just can't be logical because there also may be a mental health component happening that you're not aware of. And so you need to be aware of that. But I want to ask you this question. What are you doing as a founder to build trust in the decision making around fairness? What are you doing as a successor to say, I am going to do what I said I'm going to do, and I'm going to be accountable, and I'm going to be wise and responsible in stewarding this business? And here's my track record. And here's the financial transparency that I want to show you that I have a good accountability piece with. In many farm families, what I call the great pause has done is it's amplified pre-existing conditions and tension that has already been there. So if you have parents who are stonewalling and who are silent, then start making your own plans on your own. You may have siblings who are very sad or very happy for you. And again, you get the behavior that you accept, but ultimately only you can choose your behavior. You can't change other people. You also may be overwhelmed as a successor with all of the decisions ahead of you and what you need to be doing. And I'd like you to encourage you to think about getting a coach and getting someone to help facilitate you chunking that down into manageable pieces. You may also be getting pressure from your in-laws, and there's a different way of being or thinking or feeling from the family who comes from a different culture, and you need to have a conversation around that. And you may also have grandparents who were born in the 20s and 30s who are very close-fisted, and they don't want to give gifts with an open, warm hand because they're afraid. And so there's a whole conversation there around figuring out why that is. So one of the resources that Dr. Moira Summers has led me to is Intentional Wealth by Courtney Pullen. And I'd recommend that you get a copy of that and start thinking about being intentional about the kind of governance that you need to make decisions in your family. And governance is just a big, mean word for how you make decisions. And it might be informally, or it might be helped by having those family meetings. I also want you to start looking around and copying success. And one of the things about being a CAFA advisor is a CAFA advisor who has over 10 or 15 years of experience, or is very energetic, even if they've only had 5 years of experience, they've seen a lot of really amazing scenarios, and they can help you as a farm family copy success. So think about sharing story and learning from others. Also know that you're not alone. There's so many people right now that are stuck, and this picture of our guys out in the harvest field, it's just a memory of us enjoying some help that we got from Switzerland that year when our Swiss friends came to help us. And remember, it's okay to ask for help. And remember that conflict avoidance is, that dance has to stop, because not doing anything is not going to help you make the decision that you need to be making. So again, what does fairness look like to you? Think about it. Write it on a paper, bring it to the meeting, read off the paper if it's emotionally hard for you to talk about some of the story from your childhood, or how you were treated as a young woman or as a young man, how your father was so hard to deal with and you don't want to repeat the same stories for your family. Whatever your story is, be prepared to share it with the rest of the family. And part of my story is having a husband who is very ambitious, determined, and we have an amazing farm and a great seed business, and we've already transitioned part of our seed business to the next generation. But I have this slide of him standing in front of his new truck that he was required to buy after he crashed his other truck in October of 2017. He almost died. He was in trauma care for 10 days, and then he spent 3 months in a hospital bed in our living room with 13 fractures in his ribs. But the reason I put this slide on with fair is because I think it's a good way to wrap up and remind you that when you do business dealings for new trucks or new combines or new equipment or new cattle, whatever you're buying to manage your farm inventory, you always want to be treated fairly. You want the finances to be clear, the debt servicing structure to be clear. You want a good attitude in terms of what the service capacity is going to look like once the machine or whatever has been delivered. And it's your intention that you're not going to get gouged, because farmers hate, of course, to be gouged. And you also want to have an ongoing relationship with this person or with this company or this dealership, because they serve you and you serve them. And so it's win-win for everyone. What would it look like if you treated your family the same way you treated your cattle buyer, the equipment dealer, and the person who's supplying your chemical and fertilizer to your farm? Sometimes we treat outsiders better than we treat our family. So I have many resources for you on my website at farmfamilycoach.com or elainefroese.com. Again, text me if you'd like to do a free 15-minute discovery call. My book, Building Your Farm Legacy, is now an audio book, so I can be with you and encouraging you while you work. But ultimately, at the end of the day, as we celebrate farm transition and as we celebrate the fact that it is really about people, we need to focus on what we're not doing, and we need to execute to get that done. So my hope is that you'll think about what you need as a founder. You'll think about what you need to do to serve your clients as an advisor, and that you'll also think about what you need to do as a successor. And this is a screenshot of my husband and my son standing on top of an air tank, getting ready for seeding. And what energizes them is that they understand each other's differences, and they understand that we ourselves on Boys of Select Seeds and Froese Family Farms are on this transition journey. This is not Roundup, folks. This is not a 10-day solution. You're on a journey, and it's my hope as a farm family coach that you will manage the energy around money and that you will empower your family. So reach out to me, stay connected, and if we don't get time to answer your questions this morning, be happy to answer them through your texts as you continue this conversation with me. Remember, it's your farm, it's your family, it's your choice. And finding fairness in farm transition is all about helping everyone be successful. And I wish you well on your journey.
Looking to manage oil and gas development on your property? Since 2009, WellTrax has been a leading provider of oil and gas management solutions. With dedicated software, professional oil and gas administrative support, and more, we specialize in saving our clients time and maximizing income from oil and gas holdings. Get well connected today and learn how our WellTrax team can help you.